Hi, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy, and we're here at 2 p.m. on Friday, July 21st, for a very special show. Our topic is Healing Us in the Rocky Mountains, and we have the Healing Us network team here with us today. And you're looking at Laura Fielding, Scott Denoye, and Sukuru Fours at this point. And we will be having others joining us very soon, Dr. Joe Jarvis and Maddie Purvis and Kenny Ballantyne, the creator of the Healing Us movie, the primary creator, with Maddie Purvis as the editor extraordinaire. And we're going to start off with three of the three characters from the movie and from the Red Berets movement. I'm going to turn over the mic now to Laura Fielding, who is going to do an introduction about the Healing Us movie and the whole project and the Healing Us network, as well. So, Laura, it is all yours.
Thank you. Thanks for welcoming us back to the show, Joe. My name is Laura Fielding, and I'm the founder of the grassroots craftivism movement, the Red Berets for Medicare for All. And the Healing Us network is, it's been really a journey, even over the last few days, as we'll talk about as we get more into the show. It's a living project because there are constantly new people coming in and sharing their stories and new ideas that are being generated all the time. So I'm excited to get into just even developments that have happened since Denver, which was on Tuesday night. But if we go, I think most of the viewers know the story behind how Kenny Ballantyne got connected to us, so I don't think I need to trace that far back, but that was in March of 2021. So here we are now, we're well over 2 years into the Healing Us movie project. And maybe people also know that we first premiered the movie in Tacoma, Washington, which was the location of the first filming of the movie. The whole weekend we did various actions. Scott Denoyer came out all the way from New York to come be interviewed. There were many people, local activists as well, who were interviewed that first weekend. In retrospect, I recognize what an enormous, ridiculously full weekend that I tasked Kenny with. So they were booked nonstop, with all of the interviews of the mainly whole Washington volunteers, myself, Lisa Theobald, and Scott Denoyer, and many others interviewed. And the interviews were just one piece of it. And then there was the rally outside of Representative Kilmer's office, demanding that he co-sponsor Medicare for All, Rep. Jayapal's bill, and then two separate craft and a children's crafting circle. So that was all of that happened in one weekend, but we didn't know how much time we would get with Kenny. That I didn't know if that was it, and I figured that might be our chance. We should get as much in as possible. So anyway, we premiered the movie in Tacoma for that reason, to kind of celebrate coming full circle of that first weekend of filming. So that was on May 19th. And then we did, I don't see Joe. So,
well, don't worry, I'm here.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
To focus on you.
Right. Thank you. So yeah, and that was wonderful to bring to honor Tacoma in that way and have the premiere in Tacoma, the city where we did so much of the original filming, and then we did a free screening up in Seattle the following night, which was beautiful as well. And now people, obviously, as you know, are able to see the film online. It is available. People can download Vimeo, and if they use the promo code Red Berets, they can get it at 50% off. And we only mention that one first because if people go through Vimeo, then it gives the filmmakers a little bit more of a percentage of that, and this is their livelihood. But otherwise, if Amazon Prime is easier, then that's a great way also to see the film. So people can see it and share it with their family members and with small groups, your community, even up to 50 people at this point. Just show people, get the movie out there in that way, and that's what we're hoping people do. And then over time, we're getting these opportunities to have in-person screenings and build community and bring local healthcare organizations out to table, out to talk about what are their local needs, what are things that what's on their agenda, what are they doing, and it's different for every single city and community, but it is a very special opportunity to have been able to go as a group all to Denver, which that we'll get into. I'll pass this on here in just a second, but it was sold out, and it was a lovely, really different health single payer organizations, not just one, but several that came out to support us, and that was wonderful. I think I'll pass it on maybe to you, Sakuru, to talk about Tuesday night in Denver. By the way, if we are not always meeting the eyes or looking up, those we so many people took berets and crafted items in Denver that we actually are knitting and crocheting to try to have as many available for people that come see the film tonight here in Salt Lake City. So that's why we are crafting even as we're trying to finish projects before tonight.
Okay, before we move over to Tsukuru,
yes,
I did have a question. You were in the Alamo Theater, okay,
yes,
in Denver. And you were a big success at the Alamo Theater, right?
yes, I'd say so. It was, people were just really pouring out their appreciation. They were passing out cards to people, asking them to sign up to host house parties, because they're Colorado for Universal Healthcare, the other single payer orgs there in Colorado are really looking to utilize Healing Us as a movement tool to share, and they want people to host these little in-person community screenings to help educate people and get people engaged in the process.
Okay, I think that's a wonderful thing. I also wondered whether having it, okay, at the Alamo Theater gives you a chance to network to other Alamo theaters across the country.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll probably leave the answer, that question maybe for, Kenny and Maddie. But I think that's a really good suggestion. I don't know if that's, yeah.
One reason why I wondered that is because we have an Alamo Theater here.
Oh.
In Ashburn at what is sort of the informal town center.
Mm-hmm.
It's the One Loudon shopping center here. Okay, and it has the Alamo Theater as one of the central points in it.
Yeah, so that would be lovely to, and it's still, there's nothing been scheduled in DC yet. It seems to me like that would need to be a matter of local, of our revolution and Maryland Progressive Coalition, all these organizations deciding they would like an in-person screening, because obviously to kind of put something like this on, That was one of the reasons definitely that we were able to really fill the seats and make it so successful is you had veteran single payer organizers. They are very well established, as probably most of the people that are watching your program know, having had legislation for a long time, and as well the ballot initiative in 2016. So like they have the people out seeking, how can we continue to bring people into the fold? And it was, not to say easy, but they had people to reach out to. Here in Utah, as Dr. Jarvis will get into, I'm sure, they're in the formative stages. So it's not as much of a, there aren't those connections forged quite yet. They're in the process of doing those things. But again, like he'll get into that when it's his turn.
Okay, let us move to Tsukuru.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so I'll just put down my crocheting. I'm just crocheting like mad here, but okay, I will
My
sit
turn.
it down. Hi everyone. So yeah, as Laura said, I mean, I would say Colorado was a great success. I mean, we had a full house, and as once again, as Laura said, I mean, the love and support that we felt was amazing, right, guys?
Yes.
I mean, it was just
Oh my God.
amazing. Enthusiasm that they brought to the screening. So we had so our moderator for the panel was Mr. T.R. Reed. He is a well-renowned journalist and also a healthcare justice advocate himself. He's written a book, and actually he's a documentary filmmaker as well. So it was just a really great honor and privilege to be with him and to
Yes.
be, to have a discussion moderated. And also, for me personally, he has a great Japan connection because he spent some years in Japan as a journalist. So he's fluent in Japanese, and he's once again written books. Written 3 books actually published in Japan, and also his healthcare. His book about healthcare includes the study on Japanese, health system. So yeah, I think our discussion was really very, very informative and very energizing, I think, for the movement. Thanks to Dr. Joe Jarvis, who is joining us later.
Yeah.
We answer. I mean, he answered a lot of questions with regards to how to appeal to conservatives about the single payer and stuff like that. And I think I think you guys agree too. I think one of the greatest pleasures of seeing the reaction of the audience to the film itself is that it's really, I think the film really works because we have so many different perspectives, and having really Dr. Jarvis in there as a part of the film,
Yes.
and then not only us the leftists, I think it really it's just really beneficial for all of us, yeah. So I think that was great. And also another encouraging thing about the panel and also the event itself in Colorado was we could really see the sort of cross country, interstate collaboration developing. There's a great possibility for us to. I mean, I can't really comment on, I'm not really representing California or anything like that, but yeah, we could, we could have possibility of collaborating with other states and doing, things like ballot initiative on the same year,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
So it was just really energizing. It just gave us a lot of hope.
Yes.
Yeah. So anything you want to add?
Thank you for bringing your energy, Sakuru. I feel lifted, 'cause-
However, you all have a considerable amount of energy related to the Denver event, don't you?
oh yes, oh absolutely. But it's just sometimes I think, given the task of an overview and kind of making sure to track the process and touch on different points, I get serious about it. And then it is interesting. That is a fascinating point, because as soon as we connect to an experience that we're immersed in or that we just recently had, the energy is there, and it's like we're in it. And so that was very much what it was like for me. I was brought to tears really on multiple occasions, which isn't unusual, but I was also just really moved by the outpouring afterwards, people coming up and thanking us for all of the hard work that we put into this. And I was told I had a beautiful soul, and thank you for the love. And I'm sure they both heard things like this too. It was really it felt like a huge gratitude for the labor of love that it has certainly been for all of us over the last couple of years. So, and that's what we want it to do, is to make a difference and to energize people and to get these conversations going about how we can come together and realize it's not a partisan issue. We're going to continue to get stuck into this left-right narrative, but the more that we talk about the need for healthcare and share.
Sometimes when one is sitting in a movie house, I've often had this experience myself, you can feel at certain points in the movie the crowd response. But did you get any of that when sitting in the movie from the crowd at various parts in the film?
I don't think there's ever going to be a screening or a showing where somebody watches it and there isn't that. I think even in somebody's living room,
Mhm.
you can. There's so much emotion, so much power in this movie that I don't think you can walk away without having some sort of reaction.
Yeah, and it is interesting on the bigger screen and in noticing the different acoustics. Certainly in Colorado, and then at the sound check yesterday here at the Rose Wagner, there's just I don't know how to find the words for it, but certainly I think there's a power in having that really excellent sound system that
Yes.
is able to be conveyed. Anyway.
And Sakura was talking about a possible coalition that we're setting up. The great thing about this, if we can get multiple states to, coordinate their ballot initiatives and their legislative initiatives, what that does is it divides the insurance companies' money that they spend on advertisement, because and that will weaken what they're able to do if they have to do it on multiple states at the same time rather than just one here and there. So we're hoping with this sort of approach that we might be able to get one or two of these states through, by weakening their defenses.
And something that wasn't really it just occurred to me actually, because kind of talking about energy and feeling the movement energy of the experience, there's the aspect of dividing the resources and the money. There's also, a ballot initiative just in and of itself, even if it's one state doing it, it brings a lot of energy to the movement because it requires a lot of energy output. And then when you're out there in the community and people get excited about it because it's something they can do right now, and then you have those shares on social media, and people get hopeful because there's something to be hopeful for. People are doing work towards actually achieving this. The movement energy is lifted. So then imagine how much we can amplify that if there's more than one state going at it at the same time. I would assert that would also increase the push for the national conversation. Just because we're doing ballot initiatives doesn't mean that that necessarily only equates to this issue being on the state level. What it actually does is bring healthcare into the conversation, which therefore brings it into the national. It will be in the national conversation because if you have multiple states with volunteers out on the ground, all gathering signatures and all sharing their events and what they've been doing on a daily basis, it is forced into the national conversation. So
it's forced into the national media.
Yes, that too. So yeah, it's exciting.
Right. If you can show crowds, okay, in many areas,
Yes,
and large ballot initiative efforts.
yes.
Also, by the way, there's an event for single payer that will soon be taking place in Minnesota. It's been organized actually by Lana Dell and a few other people out there.
Dr. Jarvis, and it's for on the 29th, on the birthday of Medicare.
Yes.
And they want to highlight the failures of Medicare expansion program with managed Medicare. And like we had just seen in New York City, where we just slipped by just barely saving the union members from being forced into a contract for managed Medicare.
Oh, yes. I have been reading about that. I've been reading the articles from Work Bites about that.
Yeah, and I just want to interrupt real quick because every time this conversation comes out, I want to make sure anybody that's listening gets a huge thank you, because it was the grassroots activists out there demanding their right to health care that stopped that from going on. If it wasn't for boots on the ground that would have gone through, and all those union members that have paid into a crappy contract can keep their crappy contract instead of the worst one.
Yes, I know it was the activism that actually moved that and stopped it from happening. And as it was going on, I was wondering if they were going to be able to overcome the resistance from the people who wanted the Medicare Advantage program. I mean, I knew that was going to be a swindle.
Yeah, that they just barely got that by. It ended up being a court decision, in the long run, and the court said, "Yeah, no, you're not taking away their contracts." So yeah, they just barely won. But going forward to the Minnesota action, they're really also excited to have Dr. Jarvis there to again speak to how we can appeal to conservatives as to why it's the right thing to do for conservatives, because we can scream all day long that healthcare is a human right, and if they don't believe that, they're not going to hear us. So we have to appeal to what they do believe, right? And Dr. Jarvis is amazing at that. Just
I know. That Joe is amazing at that. Right.
But he'll be joining me, and another thing they're going to be doing is that you had mentioned the ale house. Somebody in Minnesota had also said, well, we have one here, so maybe we could do that here. So there's going to be eventually a screening set up in Minnesota as well. It's just, we don't know the date on that yet. We also have one in my hometown in Saratoga, New York coming up. It's a small one put on by some retirees, but September 11th, we've got one going on in Saratoga Springs. This movie is just moving across the country. We've got talks about it in New York City, both Indivisible, Our Revolution, and Campaign for New York Health. We're all talking about screening of Healing Us in New York City. This is going to change our country. It's going to change the world.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're putting your finger on a very important point, which is that people all over the country are organizing around the movie in order to strengthen the movement for Medicare for All. And that is so important, that the movie should serve as a focus for the organizing and as a boost for the organizing.
That's right. And because screenings are local. There's a locality, there's a location, and that's going to naturally attract if there are local, resolutions, city council resolutions. It's not just state legislation, but whatever local efforts. Obviously, it's going to be a good fit for that. But also, as time goes on, there will be screenings that are shaped around the national, the demands for national improved Medicare for all, and
Yes.
on the national narrative. For example, on the 4th of August, the Green Party is actually going to be screening Healing Us online as part of their annual general meeting. So
It's going to be wonderful.
that has been sent out officially in their email. So I think they'll have a bit more detail about it and get the word out. But I think it's fine for us to be saying that because it has been sent out to those that are connected up and are Green Party members and would be planning to participate in the annual general meeting. So that's a good example of how those that are really excited by the energy of movements outside of the duopoly and putting pressure in that way and starting to build these movements that, again, it's not just about a presidential campaign, it's about giving campaigns, local candidates that are running under the Greens, a chance to really break through. And that connects up, that this is how these things are interrelated. It's not about supporting electoral politics or not, but obviously, if we want this at the federal level, that's part of the equation. So it's wonderful to see that this is going to just organically happen. That the fight on all fronts, the movie is representative of demanding healthcare at all levels and doing actions, however that looks for you as an individual who can chip in just a little bit in however that looks. If you're crafting, if you're organizing events or pressuring your representatives, setting up ballot initiatives, whatever that is, we will have screenings that contain both messages. If there is a way to, and we'll find that locally, how can we make, and there might be a candidate that is running, for example, if a place does a screening and you have somebody that is challenging an incumbent that takes corporate money and is not a Medicare for all incumbent, that candidate can show up and be part of raising awareness for their campaign. There's endless ways in which the movie brings all of these pieces that are going to be required to pass legislation, whether it be at the state level and federal together. It's just a natural flow. So
the screenings in a particular area can also serve to bring people together who are movement people, but who do not actually know each other yet.
Yes.
And the movie venue and panel discussions, at the screening, can serve to introduce people to each other.
Yes.
So they can begin to come together to bring the local pressure and the state pressure.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do without something like a movie.
Yes, I agree. And thinking just, there's always, it doesn't matter what state that we're talking about, those of us that are involved in the single payer organizing, we understand that there's one organization has tried something this way, and then another that is also for single payer has a different idea about how to get it done. And there's rifts and divisions that happen. There is the possibility when you know that you can organize around this movie, and hopefully the result is that people come together, and Healing Us, that's a part of it too, right? We have rifts in this movement that we need to. It's a constant process about coming together and remembering to be grateful for each other and every single contribution that someone's making, even if it's in a different way of contributing or a different strategy than what we are personally doing. It's about let's really have gratitude for people that are doing the work. So
Right.
yeah.
Can I say one more thing too? I just like to mention really the generosity of the filmmakers for this film, because I've worked with many filmmakers to screen documentary films, not only like healthcare justice, primarily in anti-nuke stuff, like in the past, and it's kind of it's fairly unusual for filmmakers to be willing to be to have their film, their creation, their baby, to be used as a vehicle for the movement. And but that's Kenny and Maddie are really offering us to do. They really are willing, more than willing actually. They want us to use the film, whatever the way that fits our use, as long as that's to motivate and promote the movement for healthcare. They're just like offering it up to us to use that. So it's really a very unusual situation, and very, I just wanted to bring attention to the generosity of the filmmaker. And also, I see this film as a really great film for activation. It really, explains very well, like why, we are not getting healthcare in this country. So it really, I just would like to see actually, places where there is, a great access to young, population, such as like colleges and universities, and any places that have like youth memberships, because like this film is a great opportunity to educate young people, young voters, and energize them to get involved, and sort of like show them the ways to how to get involved.
Right.
So
Yes.
And
Yeah, I think the
speaking-
colleges, okay, and universities should be prime targets.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking to Kenny's generosity, one of the things that he's done with this is he set it up so anybody that's having a screening under 50 people, all they have to do for a screening is buy the movie. You buy the movie, you could show it to your party of 50. There's no gratuity still due to Kenny. He is more concerned about getting us healthcare than he is about making money on a movie.
Yeah.
And that's his job, is to make money on a movie, but he's like, screw it, let's get healthcare.
Yeah. I mean, because really, as again, those of us that really have organized events and attended events over time, 50 is really a generous number, because quite frankly, unfortunately, at this point in time, you work very, very, very hard sometimes to get 50 people to show up. So 50 is definitely a substantial crowd of people to share this with. And if you couldn't fit 50 people into one house or little local venue event, wherever you can show it to your friends and family, and or different communities that you belong to, then have another one next week or whatever. It's not. So it is very generous. Yeah.
Do it every weekend. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Right. Do you think that this is a good moment to ask Dr. Jarvis to come over and join, Joe? Or
Absolutely. It's a
Great.
good moment to
and
have
so
that.
we'll still be listening and crafting and enjoying and learning, as we always do with when both of you get into a room together. We'll be over here though, and then Joe will give us the signal, or we'll hear you, and we'll bring Kenny and Maddie aboard. See you
Okay,
soon.
wonderful.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Sakura.
We'll be back at the end. See you in a bit.
Okay, great.
Hello, Joe.
Hello, Joe. Okay, this is Dr. Joe Jarvis. Okay, who's an MD. He practices in Utah. He's also very politically active, okay, in Utah. And you're organizing a movement currently for state single payer, okay, in Utah, okay, as I understand it.
That's correct.
Would you
our-
like to tell us some more about that?
The organization that I founded with half dozen other physicians is called Common Sense Healthcare for Utah. We're a 501c4 organization because we're in the business of politically advocating for a substantial change in the way we do healthcare business. In essence, our proposal will be a single payer proposal, and we plan on putting it on the ballot in Utah in the year 2026.
Okay.
And we're starting from scratch. There have been relatively few advocates for single payer in Utah over the past 2 decades. I know because I've been here doing the advocating. I know them all by name. But there is a growing sentiment, as there is everywhere in the country, that things are just wrong in the healthcare system. And what happened over the past couple of years is these physicians who are now partnering with me, one by one, knowing, because I'm well known as a single payer advocate throughout Utah, knowing who I was, they would call me up and say, I just can't live with this anymore. What can we do? What's possible? Where do we go with this? So ultimately, after getting a half a dozen of those calls, I asked them to convene, put them together in a room. We did a chalk talk. This is what's wrong with healthcare. These are the issues, the administrative expenses, the poor quality that inherent in the for-profit insurance business motives. There's only one solution, and it isn't incremental. We've been doing incremental for 75 years. It doesn't work. As Amy Finkelstein has recently published, right? I mean, she's been all over the New York Times and elsewhere as an economist talking like that was some kind of brand new discovery. I think a lot of us have been saying that for a while. And I said to them, you could choose to do something incremental because you think it's politically easier to do or because it's more feasible or whatever, but count me out. If you're asking me what I will participate in, the only thing I will do is I will advocate for a single payer ballot initiative. I'm not going to waste my time trying to get it through the legislature. I just simply don't believe that there is a legislature anywhere who's right now willing to pass such a law, followed by a governor signing it into law and then somebody implementing it. I think it has to come.
The influence of money is too strong in the legislature.
Exactly. I think it has to come from the people because we are the ones who are being harmed by business as usual in American healthcare. And you see it in the group of 3 people who were just, before me here sitting and talking with you. These are everyday average people all across the United States who have come to realize sometimes in very personal and very painful ways that the health insurance industry is a killer. And we have to change it. And we have to, and so people across the country are beginning to feel that insecurity and are beginning to articulate it. My job here in Utah is to identify that insecurity in everyone's heart, help people understand why they have that insecurity, and then give them something to vote for, something to organize for, something to get involved about. The movie is a vehicle for helping people see it. For helping people learn how to articulate it and say, I'm like Amy Villela, or I'm like Scott Desnoyer, and I've had losses in my family. We in Common Sense Healthcare for Utah have already sent out a call all across the state, come and tell us your healthcare stories. When we did our press conference announcing our presence in the state and our intentions this past February, we had a couple of those people come and tell their stories at the press conference, and we had those videoed so that we can put them up on our website. And my plan is to have hundreds of those on the website of Common Sense Healthcare for Utah. These stories will speak to everyone across the state. We'll get them resonating with this. We'll help them see that we're all in this together, that healthcare is really something that everyone needs. It's infrastructure that every community must have, and we're already paying for it. So that's a long answer to your question. Who's Common Sense Healthcare for Utah? What are we up to?
Sure. I was dismayed recently to see that in RFK Jr.'s run, that he's talking about he's talking about the Medicare for All program being theoretically the best program. Single payer theoretically, okay, is the best program, but he doesn't think it's the best to advocate for right now because of the political situation surrounding it. So he's in back of the public option right now. Basically, that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay, now the public option, of course, is a form, okay, of incrementalism,
Yeah.
which has proven to be very destructive, actually, because it removed the political steam in back of Medicare for All back in the period 2009 and 2010. Everybody accepted the argument that the public option is more practical than single payer. So they put all of their political strength behind trying to get a public option bill. They failed, okay, to get that because the idea of the public option was extremely vague. And, they were vulnerable to attempts to say, oh, we're doing a public option. Oh, but our public option will only take care of 10 million people. If you have a public option that takes care of 10 million people, of course, it's going to be crushed by the private sector quite easily. But anyway, you got these different versions of the public option, okay, that were coming out. And nobody knew what the public option actually meant. It was easy for the interest to kill the public option, okay, and to develop the Affordable Care Act, which was basically Heritage Foundation healthcare. So that's what happened in 2009 and 2010. And so I heard this from Robert Kennedy, and I just thought, I gagged when I heard this, literally. I just got so angry that someone, knowing what happened in 2009 and 2010, would try that again. That kind, okay, of incremental approach again.
Yeah.
I
I told you that I had that half a dozen or so physicians contact me and ask me, what can we do? And when I said single payer, they said, well, what about public option? That was the first thing they went to because it's quite popular as an alternative. And the story I told them actually predates the passage of ACA, and it's Utah specific. I was asked by then newly elected Governor John Huntsman Jr. back in somewhere around 2006, I think it was.
Yes.
What can we do short of single payer to improve things in Utah's health system? And I proposed what essentially was a public option. He found a sponsor in the legislature for the bill. And I was working with that member of the Utah House of Representatives to organize the bill. It was using a vehicle that already existed. So there wasn't much to the statute. It was just basically saying to that already existing health benefit provider that they could expand and allow others other than what they'd originally been designed for. People all across Utah could buy their benefit. That's all it said. It was very simple. What I discovered was the health insurance industry treated that bill with the same ferocity that they would have treated a single payer bill.
That's what happened at the national level, by the way.
Exactly. What I learned firsthand from that experience is anything that really is a true step in the right direction will be killed with as much effort as single payer. So what I garnered was, why bother with anything else?
Yes.
If we're going to take the heat, let's do it for the right reason. And what that says to me about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is either he's a coward and he doesn't really want to take on those major interests because he doesn't have the strength of character to do it, or else he's completely misinformed about what the situation is. And in either case, does he deserve my vote?
I'm not looking at it from the standpoint of whether he deserves our votes or doesn't, deserve our votes. There are a number of candidates out there that are attractive. But I'm looking at it more from the standpoint of, wouldn't it be helpful if we could get him to understand that the days of incrementalism, are over, and that at this point we have to go for the gold, as it were. Because incrementalism hasn't worked in the past. We've had all kinds of incrementalism, not just going back to 2009, 2010. The Clinton plan during the 90s, okay, was incrementalism. Some of the things Nixon was advocating for back in the 70s came incrementalism. We've had all kinds of incrementalism since Johnson gave up the idea of going for Medicare for all. And
Yeah, Medicare and Medicaid were incrementalism.
they were incrementalism, yes.
And so was CHIP.
Yep. So we know, okay, it doesn't work, and we know it actually delays the movement to Medicare for all. If we could convince Kennedy of that, I think we could get, a valuable ally. And of course, we have the family background there, and we know he resonates with that quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And his campaign manager, of course, is Dennis Kucinich. So,
I didn't know that. Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, Dennis Kucinich was, of course, the co-sponsor with John Conyers of HR 676.
Right. He ran for president himself on single payer.
Right. So he's got single payer close to him. He has family background, okay, in single payer. So he probably came to the idea, okay, the public option, just because he thought that was the politically smart thing to do. And probably Dennis Kucinich also thinks at this point that's the politically smart thing to do, because of course, he failed to get the single payer bill through. Right. However, I don't know that either of them are aware of the mass movement push for Medicare for all that exists right now, that we, the Healing Us Network, are close to. In other words, there's lots of stories that we could bring to the communication to illustrate that not only the need for Medicare for all is there, but that the base support for it, okay, is there. And that the problem in part is to get rid of the leaders we have now who are thoroughly opposed because they're bought. Okay.
Yeah. Anybody have a chance to get into that inner circle in that campaign and explore what you just said with Kucinich and Kennedy? Is that possible?
I don't know, okay, of anybody yet who has gotten into the inner circle, but I think some of us are certainly going to try.
Good.
And see what we can do to communicate anyway. Okay, but it seemed to me the Healing Us movement might be able to hook up with that, okay, in some way. Okay.
We're open, absolutely open for any politician to come embrace the concepts that we're teaching and endorse them. In fact, we'll put them with all the other organizations that have already made an endorsement right there on the website. But we're not an endorsing organization. We are an organization of education and outreach and in invitation. So that doesn't go well with selecting individuals to endorse. We allow them to endorse us. That's how we approach it.
Right, and that is, I think, the only way we can approach it.
Yeah.
You know, it's the only logical way. Once you get involved with a particular candidate, then all kinds of sniping comes into the situation. People are no longer looking at the issue so much.
Right.
So that is a very bad thing to do.
We've got a special election in Utah for a seat in Congress that's just underway. And my intention is to use that moment to try to reach out to various people and maybe get the issue onto one or more of the candidates' platforms and help them understand it in a new and different way. Give them a chance to talk. I mean, they'll be talking to conservative audiences, right? That's who most Utahns are. Yes. So I want to give them the vocabulary to talk about this issue to conservatives and yet still say the very things that need to be said and heard. That's our plan. That's how we're going to go about it, is in every part of the country.
And if that plan works, okay, in Utah, it's very, very likely to work in other parts of the country. Okay,
I hope so. Yeah, I'd love to go try it out. I think you already heard from Scott that I'm on the speakers list in Minnesota. I'm going to try to teach them the same thing.
All right, and Scott is on the speakers list there too, isn't he?
That's correct.
Yes, I understand that from Lana. Also, someone else is on the speakers list. Kip Sullivan.
Yes, Kip is on that list, right? I look
Yes.
forward to. We actually, our group here in Utah does its work through committees. We have a policy committee, and they're the ones that are writing our ballot initiative, the actual statutory language. And early on, we reached out to Kip, and I had Kip get on the phone with us and teach us single payer, because you have to remind you, the people I'm working with here are novices in the single payer community. They're just now kind of, with great anxiety in some circumstances, beginning to recognize that in fact there's a lot of strength in this policy. They always had been taught to look down at it and consider it, absurd and, in some ways too far one way or the other. And now that we're digging into it, we just finished our economic study, and they're totally surprised. It looks to them for the first time like you get rid of all the extraneous payers and focus on one and negotiate hospital budgets using that one payer and eliminate all the overhead. And guess what? You can drop the amount that the premium percentage is on payroll by 30%.
Yes.
And despite having fewer revenue dollars coming in, you'll actually be able to finance first dollar healthcare that's necessary for not just the people that are currently getting it, but those 400 some odd thousand Utahns who don't have financing.
Just to clarify, you're saying you completed your economic study of single payer in Utah?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. If you could send me a copy of the economic study, okay, I'd be very appreciative. Okay, I like to read economic studies.
Okay, yeah, you are an economist, if I remember correctly. So.
No, not really. Okay, I'm an MMT person.
Okay.
But I don't come from economics. I come from the political point of view. I'm actually a political scientist.
Okay.
So I'd characterize myself as more of a political economist,
right.
As opposed to an economist.
We have received the final draft from our health economist, Jerry Friedman at the University of Massachusetts.
Oh, wonderful.
The policy committee is now processing it. It will be taken to the board of directors for Common Sense Healthcare in the near future. Jerry will make a presentation to the whole board. Once it's embraced by everybody, and that means that they've understood it, they've looked at the details, and they're ready to endorse it as our policy, then we'll make it public to a lot of different people, and I'll be happy to send you a copy of that.
Okay, thank you. But going back to Kip Sullivan for a minute, I wanted to remind you, if it needs a reminder, that in 2009, 2010, during the struggle for healthcare then, Kip wrote a few key papers on the public option and why it would not work.
I remember it.
Okay.
I've read a lot of things that Kip has written over. I mean, he's been busy at this for low into now 20, 25 years, I think.
Yeah, I viewed those papers as the definitive ones on why the public option should not be followed.
Yeah.
Okay, so if an effort were made to convince RFKJ to move over to single payer, his work on the public option might be key in getting him over there.
Kip is a brilliant man. I'm looking
Yes.
forward to seeing him in Minnesota.
Yes. Okay, so it sounds like you're really very far along, okay, in Utah, and on the point perhaps of getting further along through the screening tonight.
We will be tabling here tonight and introducing ourselves to whoever comes to view the screening. We are going to community events all over the state now. putting up a table, inviting people to come and ask us questions. So yeah, we're much further along on the policy than we are on the organizing. Like I said, we're starting from ground zero. There was no real single payer organization, unlike Colorado, where there are several, or Washington or California for that matter. So we're building from scratch. It has the built-in advantage of that we're not splintering. we're small and we're still all, warm with each other, and it's working. So I hope we'll be able to keep it that way. By next year sometime, I'd like to have us with like regional outreach groups all over the state. I think at this point we have 300 volunteers.
Oh wow!
So we're just barely getting started.
Will you have a panel discussion at the screening tonight in Salt Lake City?
Yes, we're fortunate that a person who I believe to be the best radio interviewer in the state has agreed to moderate it. Her name is Julie Rose. She works at BYU Radio and has a podcast called Top of Mind. So just, a few kudos to her. People should look her up. She's been in the radio business since a long time ago. I met her first when she was with a public radio station here in Salt Lake. She had a chunk of her career with an NPR station in North Carolina before she came back and started with BYU Radio. Right after my book, The Purple World, was published, she called up and asked if I wouldn't want to do an interview, which of course I was glad to do. And that's where I got to know her. I reacquainted with her because I was interviewed by her about single payer back when she was with KCPW in Salt Lake. Great interview, really a lovely experience, and I'm really happy she's going to moderate it tonight.
Who will the panelists be?
Maddie and Kenny are the people to ask. They're organizing that. So in fact, I should invite them over and let them take over. I can see our hour is quickly slipping away. So I'll let you ask that of them.
Okay.
Nice to talk to you, Joe. Good to see you again.
Great to talk to you, Joe.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Oh, let's see.
Hello, Kenny.
Hey, how's it going?
Going great. Hello, Maddie. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
Great. It's great to see you once again.
Yes, it is great to see the two of you as well. Okay, so how do you think things are going with respect to the Healing Us Network?
Well, things have been going well. It's been very promising and exciting to have so many eager partners joining the network. What we're doing pretty quick is making a coalition of friends, a bunch of friends across the whole country that want healthcare for everybody. And we had a theater completely full of them in Denver just a few days ago, which was honestly one of the most overwhelming, encouraging experiences I've had in a while. Just to see a packed theater of people who were all united and excited and ready to do something really big in Colorado and be able to actually see the network in action. I mean, one of the exciting things that happened on the stage during the panel after, literally from a question from the audience, was how can what we're doing in Colorado overlap with what Joe is doing in Utah? And wouldn't that be special if we could stretch the budgets of the insurance lobby thin by all running campaigns at the same time, and people got really excited. So it's happening, and we're seeing it happening in front of our faces.
Could you get the Washington people involved in the coordination also?
Yes. Well, the idea, I mean, it's not quite a formed enough plan for me to spell out all the details, but in broad strokes, Joe and what they're doing here in Utah is looking at a ballot initiative in 2026. And it kind of lines up with Colorado's timing as well. And anyone who's on a different schedule than that, we certainly don't want to interrupt their plans. But what we hope to do is start collaborating with every other state that is ready to make a go at it and see how we can overlap all of our efforts. From what I understand, the insurance lobby spent something like $8 million to stop Colorado's last attempt at a state-based single-payer bill. Well, if we have 25 states all trying at the same time, then you're really putting pressure on them to have a hard time to stop that much. I mean, that's a lot of money. So that's the idea.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, and of course, to stop it, they would have to build an organization devoted to stopping it. Then, if it
Right.
was
I mean,
one state.
which will just cause more noise, more attention, and that's all fine. Yeah.
How is the building of the network going in California?
Well, Sukar is the best person to talk about what's happening in California, but CalCare is in the middle of sort of reorganization and re-energizing after what happened last year. But there's a lot of excitement and energy with CalCare. We have, I don't know, 5 or 6 partners from California right now. So California is a part of that conversation as well. And what we hope to do, again, isn't necessarily to push every org into shooting for 2026, but all of us start to have one united voice and be able to back up and support other states wherever they are right now.
Which leads me to another natural question. Is there any activity in Oregon right now?
Yes, there is. Joe's got his thumb more on that right now, but they're on that same list of states we hope to be running a campaign in conjunction with these other states I'd mentioned, sort of all overlapping at the same time.
Okay, I've always wondered whether if there were a few states that were geographically and politically closely related,
Yeah.
such as Washington and Oregon and California, whether they couldn't all go together to the federal government, okay, at once and propose that they become the providers under the same terms for all 3 states. Using Jerry Friedman's idea that they could basically be Medicare Advantage providers and compete with the private sector in a very, very strong way, so as to drive the private sector insurance companies out of business.
Yeah, I think it's another one of the items on the list of only way to do it, things we have to do, right? So,
One thing that Dr. Joe said in the panel in Denver too was that there's kind of a natural interstate collaboration effort anyway. In Salt Lake, it's kind of a hub in the Mountain West for providing high quality medical care. And states around Utah get care from Salt Lake City doctors and physicians and everything like that too. And Washington, Oregon, there's so many natural blends. And I honestly think that's an issue that comes up is, okay, well, what if you do state by state based healthcare initiatives? How are you going to pay for that comes up, because it's like, what if you're in Nevada, but California has a federally paid, a state taxed system, that's coming up. That comes up too. Is like, okay, so we're going to pay for Nevadans' care. Well, yeah, right. Like that's that's kind of the point. And then Nevadans will want it, and then we have Nevada as well. And I assume that if we have organization leaders talking to each other on the West Coast, and that expands into Utah and Colorado, that'll just happen naturally as people get on board and see, wait, I want healthcare too.
Yes, I had that idea too. I was thinking that if Washington and Oregon and California could come together,
Mhm.
then it would be an easy step for Arizona to join up, okay, as well, and New Mexico to join up, and then especially if Colorado was getting involved in that also, pretty soon you would have an aggregate of something like 82 million people
Yeah.
who were covered by similar single-payer programs. And then the insurance companies would shortly be gone from those areas because they wouldn't be able to compete.
Yeah, it's like the opposite effect of Dunkin' Donuts. Going from the east to the west, it's going to be the opposite. The backwards
Yeah,
Oregon
from west
Trail.
to the east. Well, of course, there could be a similar movement.
Healthcare wave.
Yeah, the healthcare wave.
It's the opposite of Dunkin' Donuts. It's good. I like
you.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking there could be a healthcare wave on the west coast, healthcare wave on the east coast, and a healthcare wave in the north central area,
Mhm.
starting with Minnesota. You might be able
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
4 or 5
and
states there
as Maddie was
with much
hinting
population.
on, there's some real.
Mhm.
I think there's some real beauty and potential, especially in those states where they already are sharing a healthcare burden
Mhm.
over state lines, and it only just makes sense to support your neighbor. And that's what the network's all about.
It seemed to me to make that happen, it would be critical not to have opposition at the presidential level. If opposition exists at the presidential level, then that would filter down, okay, to HHS and to CMS and to CMMI. And in that case, they would not approve the states, okay, as basically Medicare Advantage providers to make the whole thing financially possible for the states. So it would really be critical to have someone as president who would at least be neutral.
I think that is critical. I also think it's critical that people move forward
Yeah.
with the assumption that we will have opposition from the White House. I think that's at least the short-term reality. So
Another one of Dr. Joe's, that's what I call him. It's the easiest way to call him.
Dr. Joe.
Dr. Joe's, another one of his kind of main, elevator pitch of how to talk to conservatives about government-run healthcare is the constitutional right of the states to do something like this. So if there is
I
opposition,
think that's a very important point because the states do have the constitutional rights to handle health education, okay, and welfare.
Mm-hmm.
All those areas are very much in the purview of the states.
Exactly. And just in the same way that we want to filter out and water down the insurance lobby's money, we want to do the same thing in the other way. Where we want to, it's easier to tackle a state than it is the whole country. And if we can get one state going, like Laura says in our film, all the other states will come in and just want the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to be as quick as that, but I think, as I said, I thought there could be a north central wave, there could be an eastern wave, and there could be a western wave. What would then happen after that is the southern governors are always very stubborn and mostly very red. And they would probably not want, to go along. But on the other hand, if there's a movement in those states, so, basically a bottom-up movement, then pressure could be put on the senators of those states. And they might be willing to change their minds about things if the pressure, were heavy enough. Because basically, it would be a situation where these other states had single-payer health care and were saving all this money and saving all these lives and, having results that were very, very good. And that's not available to the constituents of the senators because the state legislatures and governors are blocking it. So suddenly there's a constituency for national Medicare for all that was not really there before, and maybe pressures from the senators starting to come into play. Okay. Anyway, I see you kind of looking around, so I think you're probably a little worried about.
We've got things going on.
Yeah,
with the
squirrel.
show.
Yeah, shiny objects are happening.
We have when we're in the theater right now and starting to get our show all put together, and we'll be welcoming some of our tabling partner organizations soon. So,
Okay, so thank you
what would
very
be a
much.
good, well, before we have, what would be a good concluding thought? I don't want to
Yeah.
just jump off and unplug on you. So you give us a final question.
Okay, my final question, okay, is going to be, how does Laura Fielding think this ought to wind up?
Do you want me to actually say that, or do you want me to bring the real Laura Fielding over here?
I want you to bring the real Laura Fielding over.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Laura Fielding.
I will cede the floor to our commander, Laura Fielding.
Yes, that
Executive
is, by the way,
Director of
it
the
was
Red
a new
Berets.
term. Commander of the Red Berets. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having
Joe.
us.
Okay, it was a great pleasure.
Yeah,
I look forward to another one soon.
that's weird. Where am I sitting? No, that's.
You can take this on, Steve.
Oh,
Okay, Laura, Scott, Sakuru,
I.
how would you guys like to wind this up with a final inspirational message?
I was just noticing. It seems like we're our connection is lagging a
Yeah,
little
there's
bit.
a lag. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the connection, perhaps it is lagging, but
Okay, but get on with it.
it'll straighten out.
Okay. Yeah, I think it will be. Ask your question again because I've lost the thread. There was commotion happening and communications, and I.
Okay, we are looking for a way to wind up
Yes.
this program on healing us in the Rockies.
Mhm.
What is the significance of healing us in the Rockies and the two screenings you've been doing, first in Denver and now in Salt Lake City?
Right. Well, obviously, just the geography of having them so near made it possible to have these screenings together. So that was just a matter of scheduling as kind of a simple answer. And then I'm having listened to Dr. Jarvis's interview. His words talking about a state like Denver and then California and Washington and others that have longstanding communities of different single payer organizations, contrasted with where we are now in Utah, where they're in the very formative stages. It gets me excited to be in the present moment as a panelist tonight, and whoever is showing up. It gets me excited to think I'm from Utah. So number one, we've already sort of brought the craft. The film very much demonstrates. I remember when we went to Washington, D.C. and marching alongside Joe, who said on the march for Medicare for All, this is the first time I've never marched for, I've never done a national march before. So it was like this really neat experience to have where he was in solidarity with sort of the way that we do things on the left. And here we are learning how do we talk about this to people that are more on the conservative side. And so, the film in itself kind of shows, because here we have this board of doctors who are learning through the legislation or through the study that they're getting in front of them right now by Dr. Friedman. And so now the question is I'm thinking thoughts as I'm listening to Joe talk, as soon as that study is done and they have materials and they have leaflets and literature that they can pass out, I would be in my element if I could come back and table with them, because I'm so used to doing this. And, Scott coming and helping us, we're sort of used to, and so we need to reach the people and help him reach the people in Utah, maybe more of the Bernie constituency, the people that were all, yay, Medicare for all, and we have a certain way of engaging and being sort of out front and center and public with things. Whereas this board of physicians, it seems like, they're not going to be in their element. It's not to say they won't stretch themselves a bit, but, and this is where we're talking about building this Healing Us network and this solidarity movement. It might be that there are in 2026, only it would be amazing if there were 4 states that would run a ballot initiative at the same time. It would be great if there were even more than that, but 4 would be very substantial. And I know I myself, as that I have family in Utah who are coming tonight to support us. So while it might not be a lot of people, but I've got, sort of 7 or 8 people at a minimum coming to see this film for the first time. Those are people that are automatically going to get to connect to Common Sense Utah. We'll see what their experience is of the film. So that's already starting to build the family and the connections and the community. And I would just say that I would be very excited to come again when Dr. Jarvis and Common Sense Utah would have some use of an activist like me, us. We can't always travel for the cause, but I have family here, so we visit fairly regularly. So I could anticipate being very excited about putting in some volunteer hours here with the work that I'd be kind of in my element and building community and kind of demonstrating the way. The film does a beautiful job of doing that and getting the imagination and teaching, beginning that teaching process, and that's what we're here to do. So, is that a?
Okay. Would you, Scott, like to add anything, or Tsukuru, would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you're asking for something inspirational. One thing we've all spoken over many, many times is the cast of Healing Us, the crew of Healing Us Network is so diverse, and we all come together because we all have the same common goal of making sure that we all have health care. As Tsukuru says in the movie, talking about the far right conservative that accuses of immigrants of taking their jobs, he wants health care for his family and himself, and so does Tsukuru. We this Denver show screening, if nothing else, has shown the energy that is coming together. We, as all activists, we get disappointed when we see small crowds that we worked so hard to build up. And yet, here we walked into Denver with a sold-out house. Oh my goodness.
That was exciting.
That's not moving. I don't know what is. And the momentum is only going to continue to build from here. We are not going to stop. We are going to make a change in this country, and we're not going to stop until that change is done. And thank you again, Dr. Firestone, for having us on, and all the work that you do for our healthcare and amongst other things. But that's my stick in the mud, the healthcare. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And Tsukuru?
Yes. So 2 things.
What are the prospects for having screenings in California?
Working on it. Yeah, it'll be most likely it'll be in San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, San Diego are the 4 cities that I'm working on right now. So yeah, it'll be in next few months. So earlier, the possibility of tri-state collaboration was, being spoken, Washington, Oregon, and California, and it's been actually discussed. I mean, California, CalCare activists actually wanting to do that already. So, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, and let me hop in really quick and say, this movement moves literally. Oh my gosh, stumbling over my words. A whole Washington activist and now chair of the whole Washington board, Carrie Wallace, is on a family trip happening to be coming through, as is Pepper Oceana, who there's people outside who are connected to our movement who will actually be here at this amazing, incredible Rose Wagner Theater tonight because they happen to be.
Pepper is going to be there?
Pepper is going to be here and bring a family member that actually lives here. So there you go. There's the movement bringing somebody local here into the local movement. And Carrie Wallace, who is an RN and is now the chair of Whole Washington, the last time I checked, is on track to be able to make it tonight. and she is super excited to, start to do house parties and get the word out in Washington. So I don't speak as I can't, definitively say, oh yes, 2026 whole Washington will, commit. No, but, they're working on pressuring the commission. I would suspect that, there would definitely be an appetite among core whole Washington volunteers to go again in 2026. I'd be up for it. So
Oh, good.
exciting times
Yeah.
for sure.
Let me just say, sorry, two more things. But one is actually, queers, queers out there, we need your voices to push your state, but also federally speaking, we need our voices to be heard when we are shaping the next stage or something totally different, healthcare for this country. So I invite you to, to be outspoken, to join the movement and get your voices heard. So yeah, that's where Red Berets for Queers come in. So yeah, if Queers nationwide, if you want to get involved, please get in touch with me. Yeah, and also, so yeah, one last thing. Thank you so much, Scott, for mentioning that. So yeah, as I said during the movie, in the film, I just think that when it comes to healthcare, there is really no division in my mind. I don't care what you think of me as an individual, my identity as an immigrant, Asian, queer, trans person. I will fight for you. We will fight together to get healthcare for this country.
As we sit in Utah, driving a ballot initiative. Utah
Yeah, right.
driving a ballot
Yay!
initiative. If we can't get it done, there's no getting it done. But we're here in conservative Utah, and we're going to push this forward. And if Utah can do it, then we could do it in Texas. We could do it in New Mexico.
Yeah.
We could do it in Florida. And we sure as hell can do it in New York.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. We just got to bring more people in. Everybody get involved. And so anyone that is watching this has an
One
email.
thing to say when it comes to Utah. Not many people remember that the Federal Reserve Chief of Franklin Roosevelt, specifically Mariner Eccles, was perhaps the greatest head of the Federal Reserve, in history. He came from Utah, and he was a conservative, and he collaborated, with FDR in producing the financing for getting out of the Depression and for fighting the Second World War. And he was as instrumental, as anybody in getting us out of those two crises. So in spite of his conservative orientations, in spite of the fact, that he was a Utahn, and religious, he still was able to move us forward in a progressive direction for this particular country. So I always remember Mariner Eccles when I think of what people from Utah can do.
Gosh, thank you, Joe. What a way to wrap it up. Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye, everyone. Until the next time.
We will certainly be sharing online on all the social media platforms. One way that people can help from wherever you are is just follow Healing Us or at Healing Us on any platform that you're on. Share what's being sent out. And of course, where you can find, most people know where you can find the three of us. And we'll be sending out updates so that people online can kind of track how it's going for us this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And of course, we'd be very interested in hearing about the results of this evening's screening. So if you want to schedule something shorter or longer, or whatever, talk about that. I'd certainly be very open to it.
Thank you so much, Joe. That would be
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank
Thank
brother.
you.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and good
Good
luck
afternoon.
tonight. I hope it really explodes for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, well. Okay, I guess we're still here. So
Yeah,
we
we
are
are.
still here.
Yeah.
Oh, parting is such sweet sorrow.
indeed.
But we are we've got a roll, I think. No, we don't. We do. Yes, we do. So we are
Okay.
going to exit our way out of here, and
Yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not quite ended yet. Robert, I see you're here. And Fran, I see you're here. So glad to see you, Fran. And Robert, I don't think we have a lot of people in California to do a citizen-led ballot measure. Here in Sacramento, I don't think CalCare or Medicare for All is a top priority for a lot of people as they focus on climate change and helping the homeless population. I suppose I have to point out in connection with those things, Robert, that having Medicare for All would be a great help to the homeless population. And also, having Medicare for All is part of the Green New Deal. It is part of developing a just transition to meet the climate emergency. So I guess I have to remind you of that. These are not necessarily separate issues. Fran says, bye-bye, keep up the great work. I'm sure you're addressing the members of the Healing Us network there, but thank you very much for that, Fran, okay, in any case. So I'll say goodbye for now. I won't be having a stream tonight. I usually have a Dump the Corruption stream on Friday, but since I had this stream instead, I thought I'd start my weekend a little bit early. So thanks very much. I will be back probably once over the weekend on Around the World with Dee and Friend show, and then I'll be back with my regular lineup on Tuesday for a show about changes in the international system, partly coming about as a result of the upcoming Russian victory in Ukraine, which looks like now it's fairly imminent. So bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for coming. See you later.